Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Gagnon Atelier. I'm your old pal, Tim Gagnon, and this is the Modern Masters Podcast. Well, everybody, welcome to the show. We have got a great one for you today. I'm really excited. I know I say that every time, but it's true. I'm excited. I really am. I'm an excitable guy. But today we have got some great things going on. So if you could do me a favor, and if you could go ahead and look down here and hit the like button on this broadcast. If you're watching us on Facebook, hit the like button and go ahead and hit the share button. That would be great. Or if you're watching us on our fancy schmancy YouTube channel, bada bing, bada boom, hit the subscribe button for us to this channel so that you can see not only this episode, but all the upcoming episodes, and every single episode of the Modern Masters Podcast has been archived on our Gagnon Atelier YouTube channel. So again, hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you can be alerted whenever we do some of these really cool videos. We've got not only Modern Masters Podcast interviews, but we've got a bunch of tutorial videos. We've got a bunch of art history stuff. And we, of course, have videos about our Illuminated Messiah project. So with that said, guys, we've got some little things that we have to do here before we get this show totally on the road. As you know, we have a sponsor for this show, and they do great work for us. They do all of our bumper graphics, and they work with us on marketing and different things like that. Edge Digital Agency has been absolutely fantastic. They've got a little video here for you to watch and an offer for friends of the Gagnon Atelier. So let's take a look at that right now.
Hey guys, this is Judah with Edge Digital Agency. We want to offer something special to the friends and family of Gagnon Atelier, our digital diagnostic. In this free consultation, we equip you with the tools and strategies you need to maximize your online impact. For example, your website needs to wow customers and serve them well, but it also needs to rank high on search engines like Google, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Visit us today at edgedigital.agency, and when you reach out, make sure to mention that you saw us on one of Tim's videos. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you.
All right, there we go. That was pretty good. So yeah, give them a call, guys. You can reach them at right here, over here, right there. I could do it. I could do it. But edgedigital.agency is the place to find them if you have any marketing needs digitally, whether it's graphics or videos or whatever that. They'll do a great job for you. They've done a great job for me. I can vouch for them, guys. So with that said, let's get this show on the road. I have got a fantastic guest for you. But before we do that, I'm even going to hit my share button. Boom. And I just shared this broadcast to my own personal page. So how fun was that? There it is. Watch this. Hit the share button. Share now. Bam. You are shared. There we go. That's how it works. Pretty fancy. Got to love technology. Well, with that said, we're going to use technology now, and we are going to go all the way to the West Coast, where it is super early in the morning, and we are going to talk to our new friend, Anton O'Hanlon from ArtEfex. Welcome to the show, my brother.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. It's so nice to see you this morning.
Yes, early in the morning for you. It is what, 7 o'clock in the morning there?
7 in the morning. It's okay. It's not too early. Seven is doable, I think.
Are you an early riser?
I was never an early riser, but recently, about 3 years ago, my wife got me into yoga, and ever since then, I think
about wives getting us into yoga.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to do something active in the morning. I'm one of those people. If I don't do something active during the day, the day hasn't gone right. So I have to do something that gets me going. So that's definitely been good for me.
There you go. My wife has been trying to get me to do yoga with her for years. And I tried it like once or twice. And I was like, yeah, it didn't do so well. She keeps trying. She goes, do yoga with me. And I'm like, I love yoga pants, but not yoga. But yoga, like, yeah, it's just not work. Plus, I'm like, have you ever seen that that little clip video that going around YouTube? It says some people in the morning, it's the little chihuahua that's all hyper, and then it says me in the morning, and this like zombie chihuahua kind of creeps up like this, and he looks like he's dead. That's me.
Absolutely.
That's me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm more of the first one, so we should be good today.
There you go. Good, good, good. Well, tell us a little bit about what ArtEfex is all about and what it is that you guys do. As I see your cool shirt, it says, what does it say?
Yeah.
It lasts longer if it's rigid.
It lasts longer if it's rigid. Yep. A little it's our little saying around here, and definitely kind of encompasses what the idea of why we started ArtEfex was. We approach everything from the perspective that art should last, especially art. If you're selling your artwork, if you're putting it up on a wall and you want to make sure that when you paint it, it's going to look the same as when you in 20 years when somebody else looks at it. So that's the perspective we take, and that's the idea of every panel we make is we want it to last. And so we don't have we pretty much narrowed it down to very few things. And when I started, you and I started talking a little bit before we started here. But when we first started, we had we wanted to do kind of everything. We were thinking maybe doing stretcher bars, different kind of aluminum stretcher bars, maybe doing some better kinds of wood, because obviously there's a gradient of the worst kind of things you could paint on for archival purposes to the best kind of things you could paint on. And pretty quickly, within a year, I think we decided that we're going to settle on one very specific thing, which is the ACM panels. It stands for aluminum composite material panels. And so that's all we really do now. So we just make the aluminum composite material panels, and we're mixing in a couple different other things like copper composite material panels now. But the main idea is that aluminum backing on all these panels is going to be the longest lasting painting support, at least that we have tested and that we know of today, comparatively to wood or stretch canvas or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so every panel we make is on aluminum, and the reason for that is, of course, that it doesn't react to relative humidity. It doesn't warp. It won't bend over time. So if, let's say, you put it next to a fireplace and the relative humidity changes quite rapidly, and when you start your fireplace, when it gets cold, relative humidity will drop. So
right.
So that's the main idea behind why we started ArtEfex. I don't know if you want me to go into how we started it or when we started it or anything like that.
We'll get into that. I actually have a piece of it right here, so people can see what it is. This is literally a small piece that I cut out. I've been painting on this stuff for years now, and it was actually I went to college with Shayna Levinson, and she started using this stuff and turned me on to it. I figured I'd give it a try, and oh, what a game changer it is! It's like aluminum on both sides, and then it's got this core of, I guess, plastic.
Polyethylene. Yeah, it's a plastic core.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, you can hear that it is rock solid. The edges. I used to paint on your typical wood panels, and the edges would always get damaged. In shipping or whatever, or they would start to delaminate, and they'd start. The wood would start to do this. And then you're sticking wood glue in there and then clamping the edges down, hoping your painting will survive, and it never does. Not going to have that with these issues. I mean, you could almost hit it with a hammer, and it won't.
I wouldn't suggest that, but yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it, but it's shockingly strong. And for me, the biggest shock is how light it is. You would think it's metal to be heavy. It's really lighter than a lot of a stretched canvas is sometimes heavier.
Absolutely. Yeah, just to add a couple things to what you're saying. There's lots of different kinds of aluminum panels, ACM panels. The one that you showed has a white coating on each side, which is just fine. The ones that we have an aluminum side, one one coating on it. But you kind of gave the whole pitch of what I normally would talk about is they're very lightweight, and of course the the only problem with them that you could see, you've talked a little bit about the corners. You can damage the corners, but the cool thing is that you can actually fix it a lot of the times. When with wood, like you said, unless you put some wood glue in there or something like that, that might be a solution. But a lot of times, once it's frayed, it's kind of done.
Right. Yeah. It can get to be, there are every product I think has, it has its benefits and drawbacks, but I can honestly say that once I started painting on panels, most of my issues went away instantly. And I haven't really found any downsides to painting on a rigid panel. I really have not. It's such a benefit. And the archivalness of them is, I guess, very, very good. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll preface this by saying that we're doing a lot of research right now that should be coming out in the next year or two. That we're going to actually show the comparisons from wood to stretch canvas to aluminum. There are conservation artists and there are certain museums with conservation departments that have done some of this research, but it's not something that I can put on my website. It's not something I can reshare really because it's their information. So we are working on testing that's done here in house. That we can actually share, because obviously I've done like exterior testing where we'll put panels outside, we'll do different varnishes, we'll do some accelerated age testing, but we are doing a lot more research on that, and we'll do videos of all of them, and are going to come out with papers about that. But in terms of what you're asking, just archivalness, I didn't invent this. Obviously, we didn't invent this. I have my partners and I didn't invent this. We kind of saw that there's a lot of artists, like you said, Shayna, for instance, is a good one. Julio Reyes is a good one. A lot of artists were using this, and so we started doing research into why. And once again, the archivalness of these panels is evident in that a lot of museums, a lot of restoration artists are using these supports to restore paintings onto. Because they won't have to worry about having to restretch it, which puts pressure on the paint film, obviously, over time as paint dries. You don't want it to be restretching it over and over again. You don't want to be having to do more and more stress on the paint film. You want to keep it as stable as possible. And we often talk about it like a foundation for your house. You don't want your foundation. The foundation for your house is going to be the most important thing, really. You build everything else on top of that, and so with a panel, you're mitigating a lot of the problems that could come down the road with support. So that's really that's the extent of what I can say. We are doing testing right now to show for how much water, for instance, a wood panel will absorb compared to a aluminum panel, which should be none. Yeah, it should be zero.
Should be zero. Yeah. And that's aluminum doesn't corrode, and so water's not going to really, it's not going to rust, it's not going to have those types of issues. And also, every artist that has ever artist in the history of artists has, you like that line? That's one of my catchphrases right there.
Yeah, I'm writing it down right now.
Yeah, there you go. But we've all seen framed canvases that start to do this on the wall. And so there's like the bottom section is literally 3 inches off the wall, and it warps. It doesn't get true anymore. And that's impossible with something like this. That's not going to do that. It's not going to warp. But also, if you've painted on a wood panel, they do the same thing. So warpage is a major issue, and that's not going to happen with a rigid metal surface. It's just it's unless it gets dented really bad, which isn't that's going to be hard to do. So I really think that that's a major benefit there. I mean,
it's definitely, just to add to what you're saying. If let's say you did dent it, but dropped it, or somebody leaned up against it, or something happened to it. Let's say you have 20 paintings, and you lean them all up against this one. Some of the panels that we make, they have canvas on them, and the canvas is mounted on with a DIVA, which is an acronym for archival, pH neutral, heat activated glue that we use on all our canvas panels.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is that it's reversible. So let's say if something does happen to your panel, you can actually heat it up to 170 degrees, delaminate it, and apply it to a new panel. So even in that situation that you're saying, let's say you bent it, which, of course, it could happen during shipping. Tons of things can happen between you and when it gets to your collector. You could feel safe in that way that as long as the canvas isn't ruined, and you can at least delaminate and put on a new panel.
Right. So let's talk about that, because that's really interesting. You have different like products amongst all of them being rigid panels, and one of them is you take canvas and you attach it to the panel, so people can still be painting on, because this is so smooth that especially newer, what I call a younger artist, someone that's new to painting may struggle with such a smooth surface. Whereas, with canvas, some people like that texture of the canvas, or with linen and different things. So you actually take canvas and linen, and even paper sometimes. Am I correct in saying that? And you fasten it to the rigid panel. So and you use archival glue to do that. So those products are so that people can still have the feel and all the benefits of painting on those things.
Yeah, we have lots and lots of different surfaces, and it's hard because there's so much out there, right? There's everything from UPO paper to all the different kinds of canvases, and every artist, of course, just like just like anyone has their favorites. So there's so much out there. So for a company that does, since I don't manufacture canvases, I don't manufacture paper, I don't have anything that's specifically made to us, except for a few surfaces that are very unique to us. But any of the canvases, obviously, we don't manufacture here. So we have to have a range for everybody. For people who enjoy canvases, a lot of lead primed canvases, which is probably our most popular. And then, of course, acrylic primed linen, acrylic primed cotton, which some people really like that absorbency of that, where they, maybe if they're more of a slower painter, where they really like to have everything kind of stay up, not a lot of sinking in. There's so many different variations that it does become quite hard for us to figure out what we need to do, what we don't need to do, and then maybe one artist tells us this, but maybe it's just that one artist that likes it, and then that might not be the right solution for everybody. But to answer your question, yeah, we have everything from paper for charcoal to all different kinds of linens, to try to make it as similar to what you're already used to, because obviously this is going to be a transition. Aluminum panels, especially ArtEfex aluminum panels, are new comparatively. So if you started with something, most likely you started with something else. So there's going to be a transition period, and having lots of different surfaces makes that easier.
Right. I think the beauty of this is that you have something for every type of artist. If someone is a pastel artist and they're doing pastel paintings and they're using soft pastels or oil pastels, and they have that, they can still work on papers. So, and if someone's doing charcoal drawings, they can still work on a rigid panel surface, but on a piece of paper. So that's really, really cool. So whether you're an illustrator or a pastel artist, all the way to doing paintings, and even watercolorists are able to work on your products, which is really, really beneficial. It's not just oil painters; it's the gambit of the art genre, which is really cool.
Absolutely, yeah. We made a concerted effort to try to reach out to lots of different kinds of artists. Obviously, my background, and we talked a little bit about Portrait Society is something when I started the company 5 years ago, was something where basically we brought the company out at that show, and that's mostly for oil painters, some acrylic artists, and so that was really phase one of what we made. Because we realized we couldn't come out with everything. With being a small company, we have lots of restrictions on time, on how much money we can invest into each product. And so we did it in phases. And phase one was just the oil prime linen and acrylic prime linen and acrylic prime cotton, which is just a very common surface, I think, for artists to try and to paint on. And then from there, we went to phase 2, which was more of we wanted to add like the copper panels. We wanted to add lead prime linen panels, which became the most popular ones. And then phase 3, which is what we're in now, is we're creating a whole range of prime surfaces, which are less expensive than a canvas panel would be. Obviously, for labor time, for canvas, for the glue and everything is quite expensive. But if you take out that, then that's the phase 3 that we have. Now we have prime services for tempera artists, for watercolorists, for silver point artists, for encaustic artists, for a whole range of different artists that might have not like canvas.
Right. I can see, these panels being perfect for encaustic artists because they've always had to use a rigid surface. You can't really do that on a stretched canvas. So that's really, really like a godsend for them. We actually have a question, and I think this is going to be a great question for the show here. Colleen Barnhart says, will ArtEfex panels ever be available in larger sizes like 30 by 40?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hi, Colleen. Great question. I would say right now we make them up to 5 feet by 10 feet. So,
Nice.
So 30 by 40 inches is a very common size we make. What you see on the website is really kind of the smaller assortment of what we make. We really, in the last 3 years, we focused on custom panels. So the panel that Tim showed a little earlier, it's a 3 millimeter thick panel. It's a very thin panel. They're really nice up to 24 inches. At that size, they're still fairly rigid. You don't have to brace them in any way. But once you get larger than that, you're going to need to move to a different kind of ACM panel, and that's what we move to. It's called what we call a grid panel. It's a little thicker. It's a little lighter actually, which is kind of funny that it's thicker, but it's lighter, 20% lighter, in fact. And so those stay rigid up to 5 feet by 10 feet, and you don't have to brace them. You don't have to do anything with them. So to answer your question, 30 by 40 is already available. It's just not in a standard size, but it's something that we make every day.
Nice. I'm really surprised that you can go that big. So 5 foot by 10 foot. I take it that's the largest size the panel companies make. Is probably what it is.
That's the largest size the panel companies make, but it's and I think I've told you this a little off air, is that's probably one of the most common questions because for mural artists, this might be the solution for them, because obviously murals are a lot of times outside in the elements, and you want something that's not going to warp. You want something that's not gonna change. And so we have artists that ask us for 20 foot by 20 foot panels. How do we figure that out? And so we're developing something that we're hoping that comes out in the next year, probably at the end of 2021. And I hope no one who I've already promised that it's going to come out in 2020 is listening right now. But but maybe one more year until we come out. But in the future, we're hoping to have something that's going to be even larger that we can create that would be able to fit, almost like fit into each other like grooves, and be able to do even larger scale.
Yeah, that'll be fantastic. Yeah, something that can almost like I'm thinking like when you do laminate floor tile, the way they click together. That's
right. Yeah, so we're looking at a lot of different things, and like I said, because we're small, we have to go at it in phases. We can't just do it all at once and be jack of all trades. We're trying to perfect certain things, and so we'll in the future, we got some really exciting plans coming out for lots of different kinds of panels.
Neat. That's really cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about your copper panels, because I just bought a copper panel. I actually bought 2 copper panels for myself to play with. Our mutual friend Anna Stevenson, she came in and she came on the show, and she was talking about how she paints on copper panels, and I was like, I got all excited. I got to admit, I got a little too excited, and so I ran out and I bought a bunch of panels right away to practice on, and because as I've told you before we went on the air, I paint on gold leaf, so I take the rigid panel. And then I gild them with gold leaf, and then I do my painting process. And the problem with it is the gold leaf is so fragile and so thin that if I make any errors in my process, and this is really before I'm even getting any painting done, it will just rip the gold leaf right off. And then it start over from scratch in the beginning. And,
Right.
what I tell my students is when I say, excuse my French, it's really French. And, it's like, yeah, and it's bad. And you're just like, no, and it's terrible. But when she was telling me about copper panels, and once I got them in the mail, they're right over there. They're so beautiful. They're gorgeous. They really are. Now you guys sell two types of copper panels. You sell one that's just smooth, shiny, glorious, almost mirror finish. And then one that's kind of like, she described it as sandblasted, where it has like a slight texture to it. What's the difference between the two?
Yeah, that's a great question. So of course, old masters weren't able to sandblast their panels, right? So we use a modern sandblaster. So they would always cover the whole thing with a lead oil ground, and that was their process. So when Anne sandblasters her panels to get a little bit of a tooth to it, but it's funny when we look at the different panels, it doesn't really add much tooth to it. It's still a very smooth panel because sandblasting doesn't really, the way we do it doesn't really create texture on it. What it really does, it just gets the sheen off the surface of the panel. And so the difference between the two panels is one is very shiny, and a lot of artists that and you can check this out on our social media. Or you could just look up copper paintings. A lot of artists will have the copper exposed, and so the shininess really adds to the painting. It's part of the painting of it. And then some artists you paint over the whole thing and use it almost like as a tone surface, and that's the value for what they're doing. Besides the archivalness and some of the other benefits you can use with it. And so the main difference for me, as not a painter myself, so I can't talk about the painting process, but I can say about just the feel of it and the surface tension. It seems to be almost the same in terms of the surface of the panel, but the sheen is off. So it's really just depends on what you're trying to use the panel for.
Finish, almost.
It's a little matte, yeah, definitely. Comparatively, it's very matte, but I'd say it's still a little shinier than your regular canvas.
Like almost like glitter, like if you threw glitter down it, the way the light catches on some parts and not the other. They are really neat. Now, one of the things that I've done, because I'm always painting on gold leaf, and David Casson actually paints on mirrors on some of his paintings, and one of the things about it's really like if you looked at these paintings on copper panels through, like, say, a microscope or one of those things that reads light and how it refracts, you get both a refraction and a reflection from these paintings. So oil paint, no matter how opaque you think it is, oil paint, light still goes through it.
Of course.
And because it's suspended in oil. And that just makes sense. But the oil, depending on especially if it's linseed oil, it has a golden hue to it. But when the light goes through the paint, it refracts. It starts to bend and move around. So then you get the white light becomes the color spectrum. So you start to get changes in the light. But then it hits that, whatever the surface is, in the case of a copper panel, the copper color. So then it comes back out. So you're getting a reflection of the copper coming through the paint. But also, again, it's bouncing around on the way out too. So it's bouncing around on the way in, hitting the copper. So you're getting refraction of light, which gives us the full color spectrum, the visible light spectrum. But then you also get the reflection of the copper hue that is coming out too. So I found that paintings on gold or a mirror or in the case of copper, you get this luminous quality to an oil painting that you don't normally get on, say, just a simple gessoed wood panel or a toned panel. You always get the color of the undertone coming through, but when it's a reflective surface, it's much more dramatic on the thing. I've had people look at me and when they're looking at my paintings over the gold, they're like, it feels like there's energy coming out of it. They can't explain it. They can't put words to it, but their eyes are able to capture the light that's coming out of the painting. And they think, and it's funny because most of my paintings are displayed in churches. So people get all super spiritual on me sometimes. And they're like, oh, it's all the glory and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, it's just the light coming out of it. And they get all worked up. People are funny. And, but that's one of the beauties for me, why I like to paint on reflective metal materials, Plus I love those old illuminated manuscripts, in gold leaf. It's just, to me, it's beautiful. But we're gonna show a little something here. You helped us out. We purchased 4 copper panels for 4 artists that are helping us with a fundraiser that's coming up. And so we've got a video that we're going to queue up. And these paintings that are going to be done by these artists are done on your copper panels. And so we're real excited. This is the perfect time to show the first video to promote this big event we got coming up. So I'm going to show this right now. And here we go, folks. So hold on to your hats or buckle your seatbelt or something. But here we go. The main project we are working on here at the Gagnon Atelier is the Illuminated Messiah Art Exhibit and Bible. It's a series of 66 original paintings depicting Jesus from every book in the Bible. These paintings will be displayed in a traveling art exhibit and also collected as an illuminated manuscript Bible. During this year's Advent season on the Modern Masters podcast, we will be auctioning off original oil paintings created by 4 of today's top artists: Michelle Dunaway, Frank Ordez, Joyful Enriquez, and Anna Rose Bain. Each painting a visual devotion celebrating the advent of our coming Savior, auctioned off to raise funds for the Illuminated Messiah Bible's printing. In every episode, we will interview the artist about that week of Advent, the devotional scripture, and how it impacted their painting. And of course, you will have the opportunity to bid in the auction for your chance to win one of the paintings. Be sure to tune into the Modern Masters podcast during the 2020 Advent season, November 29th to December 18th, live on Facebook and YouTube. The Gagnon Atelier is a 501c3 nonprofit art advocacy ministry, and all auction bids are tax deductible. And we're going to be able to look at that. I'm really, really excited. And I don't know if you guys can hear what's above my head. Is it too loud? How loud is that hammering? Can you hear it?
I can hear it.
You can hear it. Yeah, I can hear it too. We have got solar panels coming up on the art studio here, and they decided to do it today. So they said they were going to be quiet. So hopefully it won't be too disturbing for us. But those panels are going to be used on the project, and I'm so excited to see, to be able to hold in my hand a painting on copper to really get the full effect of it. Because when you see paintings in photos, they never do it justice to
absolutely.
So it's going to be really, really exciting. Well, tell us a little bit more about some of the products that you use and the benefits of the rigid panels.
Sure. I'm just gonna double back a little bit to what you said about the refractive index and reflecting from the copper. You explained it very, very well. There's a really good resource called paintingbestpractices.com that explains exactly what you're talking about. About that, I would highly suggest looking at that, where I'm pretty sure it's free. There's some free lessons on there. I think there's some paid lessons, but anyways, it has really good information on exactly what you're talking about, and explains it with pictures and stuff like that. But in terms of the copper, I'll double back a little bit about where it came from, the history of the copper, and why we decided to use it now. So copper has been used by old masters like Rembrandt for 300, 400 years, and there's been ebbs and flows in terms of how much people liked it, how much people did not liked it, and but old masters used it because they understood. Now, anecdotally, really, that copper will outlast any other surfaces that they have. So they obviously had wood panels, which most of them worked on, and those would warp over time. But copper was really the most archival surface at the time. And like I said, back then they would actually cover the whole thing with oil. So what you're talking about with the reflection and the luminosity that you get, they actually didn't really even see that as much, because they covered the whole thing with the lead oil ground. Now, of course, it still will go through lead oil ground, but now it has to go refract through the lead oil ground, through the paint, and then back out, and all that. But that was the idea. So that's what it really attracted us to copper as well, because we understood that there's a long history of archivalness, and you can go to almost any museum now, and you can find a little copper plate somewhere, some old master has painted on. And so that's why we have copper added on to the aluminum panels that we have, because copper, out of any other metal, is really the only one that you can paint on in oils. We often have artists asking, can I paint on aluminum? Can I paint on some other metal surface? And unfortunately, those metal surfaces will oxidize over time and cause problems like delamination, which is why we don't have anything else. The only thing we have is either copper or aluminum. But once again, we don't actually paint or prime or add canvas to the aluminum surface. The panel you showed a little bit earlier has a coating on it. That coating protects it from oxidation, protects it. It's designed because it's for signage for exterior clad skyscrapers or construction. Right. It's designed to protect from UV, protect from oxidation of the aluminum surface over time. And so that's what we will attach either the primer to or the canvas to make sure that it doesn't oxidize or delaminate over time. So that's really the basic idea of why we have the copper and the aluminum panels, and why we don't have some of the other surfaces that a lot of artists ask us for. Now that's not to say that you can't paint aluminum. You could paint whatever you want, and that's all the time. I'm not trying to restrict restrict your.
But the archivalness is important. I mean, do you want your painting to last more than 10 years?
Sure. Sure.
And that's a big thing. I mean, yeah, you can paint on anything, but is it going to be around in a few years? And you don't want your painting completely falling apart, and that's happened to a lot of artists. And so
sure.
It makes a big difference. And yeah, this stuff is used by sign shop companies. I mean, that's for the longest time, that's where I got all of my panels. I would get a 4 foot by 8 foot sheet, bring it in, and I'd get a knife, and you just cut it with a knife and it snaps off, and I'd make my own panels. Sometimes you can cut it, they'll cut it for you, but it's so much easier. There's a lot of work that goes into the prep, like way too much. The sanding and and putting a mask on. Like, I am done with masks. All right. I'm telling you right now, I'm done with it. I am so done with masks. And so, having to sand these things and get it all perfect and prepping it and all that, it's like, or I could just call you guys.
Sure. Yeah, and we have a lot of artists that do like to prep themselves. It's part of their artistic process, right? So they like to get the panel, then they'll get the pigment, then they'll grind the pigment. There's certain artists that are just like that, and we really encourage that. So I have artists probably every week calling me saying, hey, how do I do this? How do I attach this? And we're very open to that. In fact, that if you need any of the materials, we'll sell you all the materials separately that we do. So if you want to get into the process, like yourself, let's say you have a sign shop next to you, and you just want to prep it, sand it, put a mask on, do it all yourself, that's fine. I encourage that a lot. But a lot of times what happens is that people will buy a panel from us, they'll like it, and they're like, I can make this myself. And then they make it themselves for about a year, and they're like, man, I'm spending a lot of time prepping, and I really, really want to paint a little more. Yeah. And so it's kind of a cycle that I do tend to see a lot, that the time that you get to spend, you do save money, obviously, making yourself, but the time you're spending making it might offset the equation
Exactly.
that you're
Time is
thinking about
money.
of.
Yeah, time is money, and when you're a professional artist, you make money by selling paintings, and the more paintings you can make, the more you can sell. And so it's like, I think a lot of artists, we romanticize how the old masters did it. But one of the things, and being able to, they built it all themselves, they did it all themselves, they made their own paint, they did all this. But what a lot of times we forget is that most master artists during the Renaissance, they didn't do that themselves. They had a young apprentice making the paint for them. And they had a young apprentice prepping the panels. They had a young apprentice doing all these things. They didn't do it. They painted. That's all they did, and they hobnobbed with the patrons. That's what they did, I don't have an apprentice, I don't have any of those things, because nowadays you have to pay those people,
Right.
During the Renaissance, the parents paid you to rent to, teach their kids, and it's not like that anymore. So yeah, time is a big thing, and it's a commodity, and we only have so many hours in the day, and it's like, to be able to use your panels, and not only that, look, let's be honest, you're going to do a heck of a lot better job than I am, because you do it all day, every day. You use the right materials. You don't skimp, like you were saying, the archival glues and different things like that. Do it. If you're going to do it right. And if you can't do it right, pay somebody to do it for you that can do it right. And then you're going to actually have a product that's going to be, quality matters. Quality matters. I'm a big Macintosh guy. I like Macintosh computers. And the thing about Macs were the inside, when they were being designed by Steve Jobs, he would always get on to his engineers, because the inside had to be prettier, just as pretty or prettier than the outside. And they were like, no one's going to see it. He goes, we'll see it, and it matters. The inside is more important than the outside, and when you're working on art, obviously we want the painting to be good, but if you're working on crappy material, your painting, no matter how beautiful it is not going to last. Whereas with a high quality product like yours, it's gonna make your painting only last longer, which makes it a better painting, in my opinion.
Sure. And it's definitely something, that we've been trying to talk with artists to understand, when you're talking to your collectors, what is important to them. It's almost like an insurance policy to what they're doing. If you're painting, if you're giving them a painting that will last, that they can pass on, that will just increase in value if it doesn't change, or you don't have to restore it in some way. So it is there's a lot of different angles that we look at it, not just from perspective of the artist, but also from the buyer of the art, to understanding that they're getting something that's not just beautiful, but also technically will last a long time. And Tim, you're giving me a good idea. I think I might make a shirt that says, "Let me be your young apprentice," or something like that. And I'll be your apprentice, making all your panels and grinding out your paint.
There you go.
Before
there you go.
Before you start painting.
I love it. That's really cool. Now, you actually bring in artists. During the pandemic, you had these really great videos where you had artists that were demonstrating on your product and doing paintings. And then I've seen on your website where you bring artists in and you show them how to do it, how you guys do the process, how to prep their own panels and how to do that. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's a really neat little program that you guys got going there.
Sure. Well, that's a lot of that part. So there's a couple other partners in the business, George O'Hanlon and Tatiana Zaitova. Those are my parents. I obviously started with a company called Natural Pigments, and that's growing up. That's where I would come after school.
Too. See?
Oh,
here's
I'd be grinding. Obviously, that ended quickly to big roll mills that they use now, but. So yeah, that's where they come in. So they do a lot of the teaching with painting best practices with natural pigments, and they bring in with a class called Painting Best Practices, where they teach everything from pigments to understanding your supports, to understanding your mediums, to understanding brushes, and everything in between. To bring that in. And so that what you saw there is we bring artists and I'll show them how I make every panel. I'll show them how they could do it themselves, and understanding the differences between all of them. So that was, and we do that probably twice a year or so. We'll collaborate. Natural Pigments and ArtEfex will collaborate. I'll focus obviously on the supports. They'll focus on other aspects of the painting best practices. But I do encourage, like I said, I do encourage artists to make it themselves if they have the time, if that's part of the process. Don't be shy to call us, and that is something that we'd be more than happy to share. There's not a lot of trade secrets, per se, besides the materials that we use. So I'll teach you everything I know how to do, and you can make it yourself.
That's a beautiful thing. Being what you just said there was huge. Where you said there's no trade secrets. There's a lot of, I remember there was an artist that I saw something that he was doing in his artwork, and I just asked him, like, how do you do this? And he was treating it like he was like this. He treated that thing like it was his big secret thing, and the dude lied to me so bad. He was like, oh, it's like this special product, you can't get it in America. Da, 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 da. It was gel medium from Hobby Lobby. It was just gel medium, acrylic gel medium, and I was like, but he was so scared that I was gonna steal his idea, that he didn't want to share it. And it's like, in the art world, there are people like that, but most of the people that I've come across, like yourself, are like, not only is I'm going to show you how I do it, I'm going to help you to do it yourself if you want to. That's such a great thing, where you're not worried about your trade secrets, especially in a corporate environment and a manufacturing environment. Most corporations are like, man, they have their proprietary stuff and they guard that with their lives. It's like the secret formula to the Krabby Patty.
Sure. Well, we talk all together here with my partners, is that what we're selling is more the information of how to make an archival painting, right? So that's what we're selling. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can make it yourself. There's lots of companies that come out. There's a Chinese company that come out and probably make something, something cheaper than what we're doing. So what we want to focus on is not really the material itself, even though, of course, we try to perfect that as much as possible. We try to continue to innovate. We try to continue to do testing on it to make sure, like, is this really what the best surface? Maybe we need to change it in this way. And so that's really what we're providing. The panels themselves, like I said, you can make it yourself, and I'll teach you how to make it yourself. I'm here really just to make it easier, because a lot of artists don't want to do that, or they don't have the studio space, or they want to paint. There's so many different reasons why you'd not want to make a panel. There may be one reason or two reasons that you'd want to make a panel, but really, that's the way we look at it, and which is why we have, we try to do as much education as possible. We try to do, these workshops in a way where that's what we're really selling, and then the products are just secondary to that, and they kind of just fit into that. So
absolutely, yeah, that's really great. I mean, it's to me, it's like having a product that once you find that product that really works for you, and I think as artists, we're always looking for that new way of doing things, and we're trying to find a better solution to our problems. And because really that's all art is that, and being an artist, it's solving problems. We always talk about, when you listen to artists do their demos, one of the things you always hear them say is, I'm asking myself questions. Okay, and then I'm answering that question. I'm answering that question, and I'm answering that question. It's problem solving throughout the process of painting. But one of the biggest problems is what am I going to paint on? And then what I'm going to paint on this thing, how do I paint on that thing that's going to be the best way? And everybody starts off with, we start off, when you're learning, you start off with those cheapo canvases that are wrapped over, they're literally glued to a piece of cardboard. And a lot of my students, they bring that in and they do this painting, and then their painting starts to warp really bad because it's on cardboard, and we live in, this is Panama City Beach, Florida. I can throw a rock and hit water, it's like,
right.
It doesn't matter what side I'm on. The humidity here in the summer, you go outside and a wave of wet just hits you. and 100 degrees. And then we call it the heat index or the humidity factor. And it's like the opposite of a wind chill factor, only it's just wet, warm moisture that just slaps you in the face. So every time you open a door, all that moisture flies into your house. So, paintings in Florida don't do well, and so it's like, but then you move up, and then you might try, stretch canvases, and then you work on canvases for a while, and then, like for me, I went to wooden panels, and I started painting wood panels, and then wood panels and masonite board weren't enough, because you can buy them just flat. You can buy masonite boards like this, and even that wasn't enough, because I felt the edges were really not protected. So I went and got the ones that had the thick 2-inch wooden frame on them as well. And then even that wasn't working for me because of the edges and the fraying and the delamination. So then I'm like, what can I use next? And then I heard about, the Dibond aluminum panels. And then now I've recently learned about your company, and I'm like, oh, but once you start to get, you start to solve your problems, and it's like having a high quality product to paint on makes all the difference in the world. And so you have been a benefit to a lot of artists.
Thank you. Yeah, to piggyback off what you're saying, it's lots of our artists, they'll use all the different kinds of panels, and like you said, it's kind of solving problems. It depends on what you approach each painting differently. If it's a large painting, maybe you want a little thicker weave. Like Casey Childs is an ambassador for our brand. He uses lots of different kinds of panels, everything from, for his classes, he uses one kind of panel, for larger works a different kind of panel, for smaller works a different kind of panel. Same with Adrienne Stein is a good example also. She uses copper panels quite a bit now, and she's been an awesome ambassador for that. But of course, in other works, she'll use like a lead prime surface, a very smooth surface, and in some of her other still lifes and paintings like that, she'll do more of a little bit of like a weave on a canvas or something like that, like an acrylic prime cotton or something like that. So yeah, it's approaching each painting differently. It seems to be very common for artists that use our panels.
Now, let me ask you a question, because I saw when I ordered your copper panels, I saw in there it said ready to paint. So I can just slap. I don't have to do any prep. I can just start slapping oil paint on that bad boy, and it's good to go. Why?
Yeah. So let's start. I'm gonna double back really quickly, saying that old masters, and for archival purposes, if your only purpose is to create the most archival surface, you want to prime the copper panel completely, so you don't see the copper at all.
Right.
That's going to be your best bet for archivalness, because copper can oxidize with exposure to water, especially in a place like, let's say, like Florida, with a lot of salt and water together.
Right. You don't want
is never good.
Statue of Liberty, because it will turn green.
Sure. So I'm just going to start off by saying that. Now, in terms of painting, you can paint directly on copper, and copper is one of the only metals that we know that actually fuses with oil, and it has a chemical reaction as chemical adhesion, not mechanical adhesion. So normally with like a canvas, let's say an acrylic prime canvas, when you put oil paint on an acrylic prime canvas, it doesn't fuse with acrylic. Obviously, what happens is it goes between the pores and it creates a mechanical bond, kind of like what glue does, right? So it goes all between, and it creates a really strong bond that way. Now with copper, it's non-absorbent surface in that way, and it actually fuses together with the oil, and they have a great affinity for each other, so they won't ruin each other. Over time they won't change in any way. It's a really nice surface in that way. So that's why you can paint directly on copper. Now the most important thing is, most artists already varnish, but it is extremely important to varnish copper paintings, because, like I said, copper can oxidize, can patina, depending on different environments. So you want to varnish the entire painting after 6 months after it's dry. And there's a couple varnishes you can use. The one that I would suggest, the one that we specifically tested, there's a product called Rublev Conservar varnish, B44 acrylic varnish, and that one is made specifically for copper. And so I actually have a panel out here that's been out for 3 years now, almost 4 years, that we've just sat out there, and half of it is not varnished, half of it is varnished with this varnish. And the one with the varnish outside in the rain, in the sun, totally fine. The other one is completely black. The other side is completely black all. So obviously that's not going to happen to your painting. Hopefully you're not keeping it outside in the sun and the rain, but
Right.
that's just an idea of accelerating the process of.
Yeah, because I know that, you know, when I paint on gold leaf, it's not real gold, because real gold is really expensive, obviously. And so copper is the main ingredient in artificial gold leaf. And they put zinc and other things in there too, but it's mostly copper. And if you get any moisture on it, you get green. It's going to immediately, and it happens. It's shocking how fast it happens. Like you can literally watch it turn green. And so, yeah, I can see how that with straight copper, you have to be careful with getting it wet and moisture affecting it and things like that. So with the varnishing, that's obviously a thing you'd have to do. So there are drawbacks, there are benefits. It's really neat though that the oil has a chemical bonding on a molecular level as opposed to a mechanical bonding. That's really, really neat. That's really
It's similar to the idea of lead. So lead and oil is one of the best combinations as well. So lead has a great affinity for oil as well. It creates a similar effect in that way. So which is why we like to paint on lead, which is why we encourage artists to paint on lead prime surfaces. Has a really good archival surface that's been tested for hundreds and hundreds of years by. So you know, it's similar in that way. You know, and just to talk about priming the copper, a lot of artists will, if they get the shiny surface, what we call the natural surface, they'll sand the surface, and they'll sand in different directions to give it a little more surface tension. There's a really good by Candace Bohannon. She has a blog, and a couple of years ago she wrote about painting on copper. And she talks about putting garlic on the copper panels, which I don't know if you've heard that's very common as well.
Garlic.
Putting garlic on.
Garlic, so not only does it help your painting, it protects the painting from vampires. Right.
It's supposed to. The idea was that it's supposed to help protect from patina. It's supposed to also give it a little more surface tension. Now, what I would say is the garlic will give it a little better surface tension. So if you find the surface a little too slippery, you can do that. And I would suggest checking out her blog. I think you could just look up Candace Bohannon blog. I can't remember exactly. I think there's a name for it, but I know that she wrote a little article on it, and I really found benefit in seeing that one.
Wow, isn't it great how with the internet we can all share all these things and learn and grow from each other. It's absolutely fabulous. Well, my friend, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. We are out of time, and my solar panels are getting louder and louder. So this is a good time for us to say goodbye. But if you could stay on the line real quick, I'm going to say goodbye to the audience. I'll come back on and say my goodbyes to you in just a few minutes. So, but again, thank you for coming on the show. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Well, guys, I hope that you my gosh, what a great show. Quality products, working on a surface that's going to make a difference in archival. And I could have talked to Anton for another 3 hours about this subject because there's so much that we could talk about. And, it's important that we learn about all the different options that we have out there. So do me a favor, go to their website. One day I'll be able to figure out which direction to point. But right there, artefex.biz, artefex.biz. Check out. Did you hear that, guys? Boy, I'll tell you what, we are the now soon-to-be solar-powered Modern Masters podcast. I'm pretty excited about it, but those guys are being loud. So with that said, guys, check out artefex.biz. And again, do me a favor, and if you can, go ahead and check us out on YouTube. Go to the Gagnon Atelier YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, or if you watch on Facebook, hit the like button there so that you can get all the information about this program and all the other things that's going on at the Gagnon Atelier. And as always, guys, remember one thing: God loves you, and so does your old pal Tim. I'll talk to you next time.